My reputation for remaining in this course was on the line. I need to hear myself say that. I need to understand it. It's important that you maintain control of your weapon. Why are you saying the reason? Is it necessary for you to say the reason? To me, it really is the true test of self-development. There is something you could do to affect the situation in a different way. So what if I can decrease these calories by, let's say, 200 calories a day? It's important that if we are going to have zero tolerance for excuses. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Diehard Entrepreneur Stories. I am Devin Ramos, your host, and today we're diving into a topic that separates high achievers from those who stay stuck. It is the topic of excuses. Now, have you ever found yourself asking, is this an excuse or is this a reason? Whether you're asking it internally to yourself or maybe it's an interaction with an employee or coworker or team member. The truth is, it doesn't matter. Excuses, reasons, they're two sides of the same coin. Both keep you from making real progress. The problem isn't what happened, it's most likely how you responded to it. In this episode, we're cutting through the noise, exposing the trap of justification and showing how to take full ownership and create real change. Now, if you know me, know my employees, worked in my business, worked alongside me, worked with me, are a customer of mine, you probably know I have zero tolerance for excuses, like zero tolerance to the point where I'm sure people think I'm a bit of a jerk. I'm sure people think that I don't care. There's a host of other things I'm sure that comes along with that. But the truth is, it's rooted in my own journey. This is something that over time I've come to identify as a huge problem and a big needle mover if you can work through it. So let me give you some background and tell you where this topic even came from. So when I was training to become a Green Beret, this was, over a decade ago, I was getting ready to go to a course called SUT, or Small Unit Tactics. And as I was preparing to go to this course, I knew that this was one of those points that was sort of a defining moment throughout the Q course. Now, throughout the Q course, the goal is to make it through the end, to make it through every single training event, every single training course, to get to the end and be able to don your Green Beret. There are certain points along the way that, everybody believes to be more challenging than most. And Small Unit Tactics is one of those where you leave with a class of, let's say, 60 people and return with a class of 40, somewhere around that number, just as a for instance. So everybody tends to put a lot of pressure on themselves. So I'm preparing to go to this course. By the grace of God, I actually get into the course. If you've been in the military a minute, or anybody in the military, we like to operate off of alphabetical order. So when your last name starts with an R, tend to be towards the back. So I was actually supposed to skip the class, which would have meant I got to hang out, eat, sleep, work out, show up to formation for 60 to 90 days waiting for the next class to start. But fortunately for me, last minute, somebody got dropped. I got given an opportunity, so I was double grateful to be there. I started out on a good foot. Somewhere along the lines, I started experiencing struggles. Like many others, I experienced struggles. I had things that were more challenging for me. The whole point of Small Unit Tactics is to, one, teach you basic tactics, and then watch you demonstrate those basic tactics to show that you have a base level knowledge, but also you can learn something and then implement it. And then the third is just to experience it, just to go through the suck. We start out similar to Ranger School, got to shave your heads. There's periods where we don't eat much. We're out in the cold with minimal warm weather gear. Safe to say it's a crappy experience, especially if you go through during certain times of the year. It can be challenging to say the least. So as I'm going through this course, we get divided up in small squads, and then you have a couple instructors that watch out over those squads. And I noticed I started trending down this path where it seemed like I was getting yelled at, not so much frequently, but frequent enough that it was a cause for concern. On a few occasions, I was navigating, I started heading the wrong direction, and it resulted in a conversation of, Ramos, what are you doing? And a bunch of screaming and yelling. And then me just standing there and saying, well, I was supposed to go right, but I went left. I was looking at the contour lines and I felt like if we went to our east versus our west, and then just a bunch more screaming at me. This happened on a few different occasions, and it culminated in a situation where we were out waiting to do some sort of event. And I saw a group of guys who were going to go to the restroom. And so it's important that you maintain control of your weapons. And if you don't have your weapon on you, somebody should be watching it. I probably should have slung my weapon around me. Don't know why I didn't, but I sat it on top of our squad automatic weapon with a couple other weapons there, talked to the person that was watching it, went to the bathroom, into the tree line, walked back, and the weapons were gone. And I was pretty infuriated and a little bit shocked because we had posted a weapons guard. However, like I said, probably not the preferred way to go about it. It ends up in me getting yelled at for not maintaining control of my weapon. And I'm sitting there saying, but I posted a weapons guard on there. And I got smacked, to say the least. It was a situation where I kind of knew that my reputation for remaining in this course was on the line. And I sort of felt like I was at a loss. So coming back from this event, we're sitting and I'm talking to a friend that's in my squad. And this friend also is a little more experienced, a little more long in the tooth. And we're having this conversation and I'm saying to him, man, I don't understand like why it seems like this instructor has it out for me. I know we've had a couple run-ins and this and that. And he says something along the lines of, well, man, it doesn't help when you make excuses. And it kind of struck me as odd. And I said, man, I hear you. I totally hear you. And I'm open. To me, I'm not making an excuse. Like I'm just giving the reason is how I phrased it. I said, making an excuse would be like saying that it's okay. Like, I don't think it's okay for the way I handled the situation, but I just, feel like this is the reason I did it. And like, I need to hear myself say that. I need to understand it. And he's like, well, let me ask you this. Why do you verbalize what you think went wrong or your perspective or however you're phrasing it? Like the reason. It's like, yeah, okay, the reason. Why are you saying the reason? Is it necessary for you to say the reason? And I thought about it and I said, well, if I don't say the reason, then other people won't know why I did it. Then he just kind of looked at me. Then I thought to myself, I gotcha. Okay. So maybe I am making an excuse. If I feel the need for other people to understand why I did a thing, I'm using the reason to justify why I did the thing. Right. And so he kind of got my attention in that moment, enough for me to realize. And in that moment, I said, okay, no matter what happens, pass, fail, right, wrong, I'm not going to give a reason. I'm going to keep it to myself internally. And I'm just going to figure out how to turn my reputation around and survive this course and make it to the end. Thanks to God, I did just that, and I graduated just fine. And then after that, reflecting, that was a real pivotal moment. So I was really sensitive to reasons versus excuses. And as I've gotten into entrepreneurship, I've seen the same thing. I've heard employees of mine say, well, I'm just giving the reason, or I'm just talking through it, and any combination of those things. So let's break down the difference, okay? If you look up, you do a quick Google search, excuse, you're going to find a reason or a explanation put forward to defend or justify a fault or offense. And if you search reason, you're going to see a cause, explanation, or justification for an action or an event. Sound pretty similar, right? Okay, so what's the difference? The difference is really nothing. A reason is a justification for why something happened, and an excuse is using a reason to justify and avoid blame or blame shift or any combination of those things. Either way, none of those are helpful. They're both justifications. Justification of why something happened, which just ultimately isn't helpful. So why does this matter? Well, for me in my journey, what I've experienced is excuses hold you back. Entrepreneurship, growing a business, to me, it really is the true test of self-development. And it's really hard to develop as a person when you're always giving yourself excuses. In the most practical sense, what we're looking for quite often when we fail is feedback. We want a feedback loop. Tony Robbins talks about this a lot. And one of the feedback loops that he's always talking about is how our beliefs influence our amount of potential. And then the amount of potential we tap into affects the amount of action we take. And then that affects our results, and around and around and around we go. And the start of it is beliefs. Beliefs are thoughts that we think of over and over and over again. And so when we look at a situation, let's say like using weight, for instance, if we are telling ourselves that, hey, I really want to lose weight, but I'm not losing weight because all the food that my spouse buys for me is unhealthy, that belief's only going to get us really so far. But if I take that same situation and I say, man, I'm not losing weight, and I'm not losing weight because I'm not eating healthy, and I'm not eating healthy because I'm not taking responsibility for the food that we stock in our house, it could potentially change our actions to the point where we're successful or we're not successful. So that story, as Tony Robbins says, that story we tell ourselves is key. It's so important. Excuses hold us back. They hold the team back. If you cannot be counted on to get results, or if you can't get the result the first time, to learn and continue to struggle until you get the result, you're not going to be dependable. You're not going to support the team. And if you're not supporting the team, and you're not fulfilling your role, you're ultimately holding the business back. And that's really the third reason I'd say it matters. It ultimately holds the business back because it prevents necessary actions that could be taken, but aren't being taken because of the story that's being told. The story you're telling yourself, story that we're telling ourselves. So what do we do with this? Well, here's what I've come up with, and this is really my philosophy within the companies as well. Anytime I get the opportunity to talk to any teammate or coworker or employee or vendor, or even in some instances customers, I like to talk about ownership and observation. So the first part of it is ownership. And if you're a fan of Jocko Willink or military literature, you probably heard of Extreme Ownership. It's not just this military book, but written by Jocko Willink, who is a Navy SEAL commander. It's my real go-to for ownership. This is the ownership that's bred within special forces teams. This is what I've been encouraged to really just cling to as a philosophy in life. And it's helped so much. So the first thing I'd say is take ownership, and not just take ownership, but lead with ownership. And here's what I mean by that. in most situations, it does not matter the situation, any situation that affects you, that involves you to a degree, whether it's the smallest degree or the largest degree, there is something you could do to affect the situation in a different way. So ultimately, a portion, even if it's a sliver of blame, could be put on you. So what I say is lead with that. Come into a situation before the situation even happens with this expectation that you are partially to blame. And what it does is it primes you to be okay. When things go wrong, to be okay with, yeah, you took a part in it, and to not cling to the other people involved or the other facts that exist that don't affect you, the things you can't control. So it helps prime you to embrace the potential that you failed. And so then when you step into the second part, which is to make observations, you can do so more so in an unbiased manner and ready to take action. And so that second part is observe, make observations. So instead of saying in some of these situations, like I was in an SUT, we'll take the one with the weapons, for instance. I could have started with making observations, right? When we're making observations, it's important that we are objective. We stick to facts and we use our senses, right? All 5 of them, right? Taste, smell, sight, hearing, feeling, all of it, right? What are the facts? I left my weapon not on my body, would have been one of them, right? That's a fact. I'm also taking ownership of an action I done, which is something I can control. I could have said, okay, I left my weapon off my body unattended. That's fact. Did it go over well for me? No, it did not. So whether I think it was an acceptable way of handling the situation or not, it didn't go over well for me. So I could have said, okay, the buck stops there. I will never do that again while I'm in this course, which is what I chose to do. And thankfully, that one situation alone wasn't enough to quote unquote drop me from the course. So I was good. But making observations, staying objective, stating the facts, and then using our senses to identify those facts will help us understand the situation a little bit better and come up with actions or things that we can do that are within our control to change the situation next time, to learn. That is the feedback loop that we want to live in. Next thing we want to do is make sure that we have grace with not only ourselves, but others. I'm a huge culprit on this. I don't want to encourage you to go the opposite direction. I'm zero tolerance for excuse, and just be, a complete jerk about it. It's important that if we are going to have zero tolerance for excuses, we create environments where people can fail and they can feel okay failing. If somebody doesn't feel okay failing around you, which quite often is the reason people go to excuses, what my experience has been is a lot of times when I'm working through an employee that's making excuses for something and I'm trying to get down to the bottom of why they did what they did, it's to save face. 9 times out of 10, they don't want to look the way they look. They don't want to feel the negative feelings. And understandably so, it just doesn't help the situation. So if you can have some grace for their failure, have some grace for your own failures, it helps cultivate an environment where we can stay taking ownership and making observations, stay factual, come up with a solution without anybody having to feel bad about the failure in the first place. Because I don't know about you, but that's not an environment that I want to cultivate in any business that I'm a part of. The last thing we want to do is find the action step, no matter how small, to change the situation the next time. So good example of this would be a recent example of me and my eating habits. Just to give you some quick background, I have not always had, from my perspective, the greatest eating habits. And about a year, maybe 6 months ago, I started down this journey of cleaning up my health and fitness. So started getting on a fitness regimen to increase my strength, increase some endurance, And I started looking at living a healthier lifestyle, taking supplements, drinking more water, trying to eat cleaner, things of that nature. And started out pretty well. And I hit this point where I decided my fat content was too high and I wanted to lose some weight. I actually wanted to lose about 25 pounds. Since I've lost about 22, 23, somewhere around there. But I struggled for a while. It just took me a while, and it might have been longer than a year that I've been at this. And the real heart of the issue was an excuse that I was making. And so it took me a while to sort of identify that the real root of why I wasn't getting the results I was looking for, which was to be at a lower fat content, was mainly due to the way that I was eating. So as I was increasing my strength training, I was getting hungrier and hungrier, and I was maintaining the same poor eating habits. And so I was eating a little bit of junk before and working out moderately hard. And then as I started working out harder, I had a stronger, greater appetite. And so I was eating more and more junk, and I wasn't getting the result I wanted. And at first, I said things like, well, I know my body's maintenance calories are super low, and this is just, hard for me to do. And I'm so busy and like all these sorts of things. Well, I know that I can eat healthy because I've proved it. You know, I'd maintain 15% body fat when I was wrestling or when I was on a team, and like all these crazy things that I had later identified I was telling myself, which was actually preventing me from taking the right action of fixing my freaking eating habits. And it took some talking with a friend to sort of realize this. And what I realized when I got down to, I said, you know what, I'm going to stop. Like, let me just start working through this. I realized some of the things I was telling myself, some of the excuses I was giving, were driving my actions in the wrong direction. I was saying these things and they weren't helpful. And the bottom line, when I got real with myself, was I realized, wow, I have some really poor eating habits. I've always had poor eating habits, whether I was wrestling or whether I was on a team. What I discovered is I had really learned, for whatever reason, either how to eat a lot or how to eat nothing at all. So when I was wrestling, I really wasn't eating much. I was training in the morning. I was going to practice in the afternoon. It really wasn't hard to maintain a very low fat content because I was just burning so many calories and I wasn't eating anything. Likewise, when I would deploy or I'd go through these train ups on a team, we were so busy. It wasn't hard to not eat. What was hard in all of this was eating appropriately, having some temperance, having some portion control, making good, healthy choices. That was what I was always missing. And I was always just dancing around, facing that fact. And then once I did, I said, okay, what's the smallest action I can take? And what it boiled down to was just tracking my current eating and just revealing to myself that every day, what I found out was I was actually eating close to 3,000 calories and my body was functioning off 2,500 to 3,000. And so really I was staying about break even every single day. And that's why I wasn't seeing a result. I wasn't gaining. My fat content wasn't increasing, but it certainly wasn't decreasing. And it wasn't until I faced that fact that then I took another small action. I said, okay, what if I can decrease these calories by, let's say, 200 calories a day? Can I continue tracking like I am? And I did that. And then I said, okay, can I start trying to eat healthier food? So I use an app that tracks, or I put the food in there that I eat and it tracks and tells me where my nutrition is. And I said, okay, my protein, fat, and carbohydrates, macronutrients, can I keep them within certain ranges? And I kept identifying these small action steps that stacked on top of each other. And then over time, I was able to get to a point where I'm at now, where I don't have the healthiest diet, but I've cleaned it up quite a bit and it's actually sustainable. And it has been for the time being, to the point where over a period, I've been able to decrease my weight 20 or so pounds, but more importantly, with my goal, get my fat content closer to where I want it to be. And so that's just an example of how we want to look for those small action steps. So a lot of times we want to go from 0 to 100. So we want to say, in this instance, I need to clean up my eating and I want to go from 30% body fat to 15, and I want to do it now. And realistically, the gap between where you're at and the desired end state is so huge, it can be overwhelming. So it's more helpful to just identify a action step. So take ownership, make observations, and identify what action step you can take and start heading in that direction. And time and time again, after repeating this over and over and over, you're going to see your progress grow big time. So this episode, we talked about why excuses are not only not a good thing, but they actually truly do prevent you from getting to where you want to get to, and how, rather than embracing reasons or giving excuses or looking for justification in any manner as to why something happens, it's just more helpful to come into it with any ownership, lead with that ownership, and make observations. And then from those observations, look for tiny action steps and start taking action. That's all I have for this episode. I hope you found it helpful. Until next time, peace.